It is Firmware Friday for the FM9, down under at least, I guess, because it's technically probably Thursday evening in the United States. Would it make it Firmware Thursday? Now, let me know in the comment section below. Anyway, another big update for the FM9. This is still a public beta release. I just want to go through some cool stuff on here. I'm mostly just going to be free-forming and playing around with stuff I've really been enjoying. Has been a long beta period for a Fractal unit. If you're used to the Axe-FX 3 just pumping out updates, I can see why people would be like, come on, what's going on? But there is so much stuff crammed in here. Let's start with just a few little things that I'm using and that I was playing in that intro. This is a Tyler JTG. I had the mid-boost preamp on, but with the actual boost at the minimum. So it's essentially just a very subtle little EQ and a buffer straight into the FM9 Brit 800-2203 high model, my usual free LTTV mix 7 IR that you can get in the video description. A little bit of this dual delay. I did a video last weekend going through all the different types of dual delays. This is from my blocks library, which I have just updated. If you want to pick that one up again in the video description, it is called 2-tap lead. Mix at 15%. It's given that nice spatial rhythmic delay effect. And then I've really been digging the studio reverb. Stock settings, mix at 20%. I think it sounds really, really cool. I'll just turn the delay off so that we can hear, say, the bridge humbucker on this guitar and then the neck pickup. Spanky HSS Strat kind of thing going on. Let's start out with one of the newest additions in here. It is this 77 Custom OD based on the MXR 77 Badass OD, the most American name for a pedal ever. What's interesting about that circuit is there is this 100 Hertz control on there. I believe it's probably pretty similar to something like the Way Huge Green Rhino, which I used to use on my board, and I loved that kind of bass control on there, or the 100 Hertz control, so that you can cut or boost that particular frequency. If I was boosting an amp like a JCM 800 and I want a bit more drive out of it, I would probably turn this 100 Hertz control down, but let's just hear it in the middle. Gain at minimum, level all the way up, you know, the classic Tube Screamer style pre-boost. Fattening up a single coil, cranking that up is really cool. I'll go over to my main high gain amp that I use in here, the FAS Stealth Blue. I'll go back to the bridge pickup. I'll turn the little preamp in this guitar off so that we can hear again what this 100 Hertz control is really doing on there. nice turning that 100 hertz control up to really sweeten up a lead tone as well. I think it makes this kind of Tube Screamer SD1 inspired circuit a lot more versatile. And if you're used to using those drive blocks as a kind of pre-boost into a high gain amp, it's well worth trying out this new drive type. It is worth remembering in this beta release, there's the TC Integrated Preamp as well, which I think is still my favorite type of absolute chungus tone shaping thing into a high gain amp. So let's hear the 77 Custom OD and then the Integral Pre. There's the Mega Compressor update. I'll just take you through a couple of my favorite comps in here. The JFET Studio Compressor, just turn the threshold all the way down. If you want to add a bit of drive and get some grit, if you wanted to use it as a boost, turn the level up on here. We will hear it stacked in just a second for a kind of slide style tone, but this just adds a nice something that you can feel under your fingers, especially on the neck single coil here. Hearing that against the JFET pedal comp, which definitely has a different thing going on. I don't know which specific pedal they've modeled here, but if I was a guessing man, the Origin Effects 1176 pedal is a super popular pedal version of a JFET or 1176 style design. So let's hear this with the compression cranked up. We'll hear it bypassed. Again, neck pickup. Different Dynacomp modes in here are cool. I think I just like the classic. Again, compression somewhere above noon. Even adding a bit of drive and a little lift with the tone control is nice too. Another really good always-on comp is the updated optical compressor. Again, just turn the threshold all the way down. If you want to play around with the drive control to add some grit, I think it's really cool. But this one, again, just kind of improves the feel under the fingers if you're going for not insane high gain. If you are going for insane high gain, I think it's really nice as well to add some sustain on there. It's got a slightly longer attack and release on there. Again, neck picker. It's like an extra cheat code when you've already got all the delay and all the gain on there to just smooth things out with a compressor on your lead sound. That's not a new trick. It's just something I've not played around with for years and years. Now, speaking of compressors and smoothing things out, if you're a slide player, you're probably aware of the classic trick of stacking two comps together, the kind of Lowell George little feet style thing that just gives you heaps and heaps of sustain. So something like a JFET into an optical compressor would work well. Now, I can't play slide guitar to save my life, but I do have a fretless guitar here that I also cannot play to save my life, but I think it sounds really, really cool. So what I'm going to do is take the second compressor in here, and I'll just bring up this stacked A setting from my blocks library. So it's a JFET studio comp, lots of drive, ratios up high, level is cranked up, and we will run that into stacked B, which is the optical compressor with a slightly longer attack and release. The idea being that these two compressors are going to work on two separate parts of what makes playing slide or fretless difficult. One is evening out all the dynamics in there so you sound nice and smooth and level, and the other is adding a bunch of level and sustain. So I'm going to torch you all and try to play some fretless guitar now. Having those compressors there makes it significantly easier to tackle that. If you can play slide guitar, I'm sure you will appreciate the extra sustain and forgiveness that it gives you there. Playing a fretless, by the way, that's like learning how to play music again. This is going to be such a fun little journey for me, but more about that later. The last thing that I want to talk about in this firmware is on the FM9, you can now run two multi-tap delay blocks together. I've got a whole video about this, but what I think is really cool is if you go to Uncle Leon's blocks library, linked in the video description, you can use these quad chorus blocks to cop the iconic Yamaha SPX 90 symphonic sound in there. So there is this particular block here using a bunch of short delays. There's another one in here. There's some fun stuff with the time modulation happening. This just sounds pretty bunter, especially with some extra reverb and pitch detune. And of course, it means that you can do cool stuff like the Lukather inspired circular and pan delays. You can just use the stock PCM circular and PCM pan settings in the multi-tap delay block. I've got this with the Solo 88 lead, which sounds pretty banging on this guitar. I'm going to pull up stumps on this video. As always, if you like this kind of thing and you want to support the channel directly, there's links to the music that I make with my band Ragdoll. There's links to my Patreon. You can grab my blocks library, preset packs, and my free IR on my Gumroad store. Go and enjoy playing your guitars this weekend. The beta release for the FM9 is up on the forum, as always, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks so much for watching.